And this is basically the explanation why there's two ways of spelling matzahs. One is with a vav and one is without a vav. One is spelled matzahs mem tzadik tov. The other one is spelled mem tzadik vav tov. What is the reason for that? Because when we spell matzahs with a vav, the vav shows that it's a vertical direction. Something that is in a vertical direction in a letter expresses a certain revelation. A revelation that took place and was drawn down from higher up to the lower. This is basically the idea of a vav. On the other hand, matzahs without a vav shows that there's a lack of that revelation. That revelation did not take place yet. So the Alter Rebbe says this is the difference between the two matzahs. There's the matzah before midnight, there's the matzah after midnight. After midnight there was a revelation. There was a revelation of the Almighty. He took them out of Egypt. Nigla aleim melech malchi amlochem HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He revealed himself to them, the King of Kings. Therefore, there's a revelation, there's a vav. The vav Kabbalistically represents the attribute of Tiferes. It shows on the infinite revelation. On the other hand, the matzah before Chatzei, before midnight, it was before the state of a revelation, and they were in dire need of being redeemed. As mentioned earlier, they almost were already on the level of the 50th gate of impurity, so therefore there's no revelation yet. There's no vav there. In addition to that, not only that there's no vav, but when matzah is written without a vav, matzas, it means argument, conflict, a dispute. There's a dispute. There's a dispute as a dispute with negative energy, with negative elements. It is not a complete final revelation. There is a certain conflict with something that's negative, that is fighting Kedusha, that is fighting the positive energy. And therefore, this is the matzah before midnight is referred to as matzahs, because it also symbolizes the idea of an argument, that it's not completely positive. There is still negative elements that are struggling to grab hold and to take control. So therefore, when it comes before Chatzos, before midnight, the Jewish nation, they did fulfill the commandment of matzah, because they were told to to fulfill and eat matzah in the evening, but still they were like a child relating to the father, very early stage, on a very early stage, not yet completely mature in understanding and connecting with the Almighty. On the other hand, the state of nullification that was brought about from the revelation that took place after midnight, so that state brought them up to a higher standard. It brought him up, Kabbalistically speaking, and as it's mentioned also in Chassidus, that there's two levels of fear. There is Yirat HaTorah, a lower fear, and there is a greater fear. A lower fear is a fear that a person with their own mind could understand it and bring oneself to fear of the Almighty. A Yiroi law, a greater fear, is something which comes as a result of something exceptional, something unusual, something beyond limitations of the creation. And that is basically Yiroi law. What the Jewish nation experienced before midnight was Yirat HaTorah. They experienced matzah, which is the level of, as mentioned earlier, emunah, belief. It is also the level of humility, bittul, nullification, but it's only to a certain extent. It was how they understood it, it was how they fulfilled it. Like a child calling his father. On the other hand, after that, they were on a level that were already mature enough, because they were already upgraded and uplifted to a higher level, which is the revelation after midnight. So therefore, the matzah after midnight didn't need any protection. The matzah, what we eat before midnight, because we're still struggling with negative elements, and that's why matzahs is called matzah, which is also matzahs, which is also from the word machlekes, argument. Still, there is there's a struggle. There's an ongoing struggle. On the other hand, the matzah that comes after midnight is a matzah is completely already taken care of, because that matzah did not have a chance to rise because of the revelation that took place, as we say it in the Haggadah. And with this, we'll also understand the answer to the first question, that we have two different matzahs. On one hand, we see that there is a commandment to eat matzah. On the other hand, we say in the Haggadah that it was because the dough didn't rise. The answer is we're talking about two different stages in matzah. There's the matzah from before midnight, that needed protection. A person needed to be on top of it, the dough shouldn't rise, because he was still in a state. One is in being challenged by negative elements. On the other hand, the matzah that is after Chatzos, after midnight, is already taken care of, because there's no place left for negative elements to rise, because of the infinite revelation that took place then. Now the question is, what matzah are we eating? Well, we eat before midnight. Are we eating the matzah that they ate before midnight, or are we experiencing the quality of matzah that they ate that was accomplished through the revelation, the infinite revelation which took place at the strike of midnight? So the answer is, we now find ourselves with the experience of Torah mitzvahs. We have the same with that, so we can accomplish, and we have the potential that in the matzah that we are eating before midnight, we are experiencing the unique spiritual qualities that is in the matzah that came about after the revelation of midnight, the revelation of the Almighty, because of the unique quality of Torah mitzvahs that we have. So therefore we can connect with the infinite. It's higher than limitation. Okay, we mentioned earlier, and this is something that needs to be clarified, because it is something that sometimes seems to contradict each other. We mentioned earlier that matzah is the idea of emunah, belief. And then we mentioned that matzah is the inyan of an intuition, a certain sense, how a child could relate to the father, which shows a certain logical feeling. So the question is, what is it? Is it logic or is it belief? Logic and belief are two opposites. So the Mittler Rebbe, Rab Dov Ber, who was the second leader of Chabad, writes in one of his famous books, Svarim, called Shara Emunah, right in the beginning, it's very interesting, right in the beginning, the first chapter, when he speaks about Pesach, it's about 55 pages there, he speaks about Pesach, he says that we find two things, we find belief, we find emunah. So which is, we find belief, we find chokhmah, logic, intuition, sense of logic. So which is it? So he says in chokhmah there are two levels. There's the level of chokhmah as it is higher than logic. How it is, Kabbalistically speaking, before the attribute of chokhmah, which is the crown which is on top. And then there is the logic of the attribute of chokhmah, which is logic. So basically, these are two different levels. One is emunah, comes from very high, that's higher than understanding. On the other hand, there's also logic, because one comes from the other. The attribute starts from keser, but in keser itself there's already a chokhmah. There's already a logic, as that logic is concealed and part of something that's higher than logic. In Kabbalah it's called chokhmah stimah, the concealed chokhmah. It is the hidden chokhmah. It is something that logically we may not sometimes understand a reason for a certain thing. And Chassidus says it's chokhmah stimah. Over there it's understood. It's a hidden reason. Its position is actually in arech, which is part of keser. If you want to label it in Kabbalah, it is part of keser. In the same sense that we mentioned earlier that there's Chometz and Matzah, rising and state of humility and nullification, in a spiritual sense, we also have it in addition to the spiritual sense in the personality of a person. We, as we'll mention further, we also have it in the letters that in which spell out these two words. The first difference between Chometz and Matzah is Chometz is something that the dough rises, and Matzah the dough remains as it is. Which basically, as mentioned earlier, Chometz is arrogance, uprising, uplifting oneself. Matzah is state of nullification. So therefore, Matzah is basically lechem eini. Lechem eini, it's a bread of a poor person. There's nothing, no special ingredients. It's flour and water. On the other hand, matzah shir, as we mentioned earlier, could be from fruit juices. But according to the commandment, what we need to eat matzah for Pesach, we need to eat the plain matzah, water and flour. That's it. Speaking about the letters and what spell out Chometz and Matzah, so we have two different words, but there's a very small difference between them. Chometz is Ches Mem Tzadik, and Matzah is also Mem Tzadik and a Hey. So the only difference is between Hey and Ches. What is the difference between a Hey and a Ches? A Ches is closed from all three sides. It is only open on the bottom. The bottom signifies that at the door, the Chatos, the evil inclination, finds himself in. Which means that when a person is in a situation of a Ches, he's locked from all sides, and the only place to go is down. On the other hand, when a person is in a Hay, there is a little opening on the top. And that opening on the top gives a person permission, gives a person the potential to be able to jump out and repair what he needs to take care of. And although this is a small opening, so it is, as it's mentioned in our sages, it's also, we're coming from Purim, so it's also related to Purim. In the Song of Songs it says, the voice of my beloved is knocking on the door and says, open up. Achesi, my sister, Ayosi, Yenosi, Tamosi, as it's mentioned in Shir HaShirim, one of the famous verses, popular verses in Shir HaShirim, in the Song of Songs. So our sages tell us, it begins, the verse opens up, Pischili, open up for me. So our sages tell us, what does it mean, open up for me? It says, open up for me even the eye of a needle, and I will open up the opening of a ulam, of a certain chamber in the temple, in the Beis Hamikdash, which didn't even have a door. In other words, that once a person will initiate even the eye of a needle, the opening of eye of a needle, the Almighty says, I'll take care of it in such a way that I'll open up like the opening of a chamber that never had a door, that it'll always be open.